Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
If I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? I didn't think I'd be able to do a show tonight. And in fact, I'm pretty damn exhausted and I didn't want to do a show tonight. We'll get to the YouTube stuff in a moment. You know, the like, share, all of that. Oh, you could see. Don't go reeing on me, people. I did not get a COVID vaccine, but I did get my flu shot. And that's what that little mark is on my shoulder. I do believe in the flu shots. I know not everyone does, but you want to laugh. Boy, am I going off on a rabbit trail. Hello, Kathy. So I was at Kaiser the other day, and they asked, do you want a flu shot? And I'm about to go traveling to New Hampshire. And I'm like, does it have the COVID vaccine mixed in with it? And she's like, no, is that what you wanted? I'm like, no. She goes, I didn't think so. But I always do get the flu shot. The flu is nothing to be messed with. And I once got it super, super bad. I got both strains A and B within a month. But anyway, that's why I have a little pinprick on me. But definitely was not the COVID shot. Anyway, hello, JJ. So I wasn't going to do a show tonight, and I've got a real special show planned for Monday that I'll get advertised for tomorrow. But one reason, and hello, Andrew, that I'm doing a show is because, well, we'll get into some of the background, but some people are trying to shut me up about Michigan. And I think the last term can tell you how well that works. Let me give you a pro tip. The one way to guarantee I'm going to keep talking about something is to try to shut me up. No one shuts me up. Anyway, let's do the YouTuber stuff and then we'll get into it. This is not going to be a long show. It's just a brief update from some stuff that actually went on today. I was not planning to talk about Michigan for months, but some things came up today that made it necessary. And the fact that somebody tried to shut me up made it absolutely necessary. Actually, several people tried to shut me up. I do not react well to that ever. And I'm just removing some stuff here. Okay, so first of all, if you like the content that I deliver and you like me not shutting up, please subscribe to the channel. I would super, super appreciate it. And give the video a like and a share. You will annoy all the right people if you do. And it's been a while since I could say that. Next, follow me on Twitter. Twitter is hopping. I'm also on Facebook, but to be honest with you, Facebook is not where it's at. I am having such a good time on Twitter, and no, I did not see Lord God King Heiss on Reason this week. Uh-oh, I might be in trouble with my Mises overlord. And lastly, but this is definitely not leastly, is that a word? Please support me on Patreon, again, if you like this kind of content. It's patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. I would truly, truly appreciate it. Okay, so what's the backstory? Here's the backstory. And God, where do you even start with this? If you guys haven't watched the video before, you won't know a lot of necessary stuff. But I saw a comment, actually I think it was from the former chair of the Libertarian Party of Michigan, and it seems like everybody's lost their minds because I used to be friends with him. He's unrecognizable today, and that makes me very sad because I really liked him. I am not going to be mentioning names, at least I don't think so in this show. So if you know who I mean, you do, and if you don't, you don't. And it was commented that there was going to be another overwhelming vote of no confidence at a convention in February. So then I got in touch with the current chair and was like, is there a convention set for February? Like, what's going on? Because I knew they couldn't set a convention in February because of notice requirements. So, you know, that got me poking around a little, and it seems like there might be some people who look like they are absolutely convinced that they're going to have a convention, a special convention in February. And since that's not called by the board, a reasonable inference is that some people might be planning on just holding the convention on their own. So I posted, and I actually did mean this as good advice. I have friends on both sides of this dispute. I obviously have preferences, but ultimately, it's none of my business who gets elected to what in the Libertarian Party of Michigan. What is my business as both a party member and an LNC member is that members' rights are protected and they do things right. If they do things right, it doesn't matter who likes the results or not. That's not in Michigan. It makes no difference. They can elect whom they want. My interest is in making sure that members' rights are protected. So, I offered a piece of advice that was my opinion. And just because I'm an LNC member does not mean I do not get to give my opinion. You can disregard it. But I also can speak authoritatively on what I will do if something ever had to come before the LNC. I do not have to keep quiet about my opinions on a thing and how I will act. I can't speak for anyone else on the LNC, and I don't pretend to. So, my piece of friendly advice was, think twice before you hold an illegal convention. Because if you hold an illegal convention, there's pretty solid precedent, both on this term's LNC and the Judicial Committee decision of last term regarding Delaware, that, and Grace, I have no desire to have this conversation with you, and you can have your opinion. So you can keep that up or not. I don't care. As long as you're not abusive in my chat, you are welcome to be there. But I trust my background in interpreting bylaws. Disagree all you want. But continuing. So I gave a piece of advice. Do not hold an illegal convention. Because due to past precedent of, again, the National Judicial Committee and the National LNC, if you try to elect a new chair at an illegal convention, it will not be recognized. And it doesn't even require us to do anything but continue to recognize the board that's in place. If you want to have a chance at electing a new board or whatever it is that some members desire to do it legally, and no one will have a thing to say. Do it right. Do it by the book. And I had said, even if on a wild hair, the LNC decided they were going to recognize it, but they wouldn't because that would take an affirmative action. But I can't speak for everyone. I can tell you what my position is. It would be an automatic appeal to the National Judicial Committee for constructive disaffiliation, and I would place bets, and I'm not a betting person, so I mean that figuratively, that it would be overturned by the Judicial Committee. And you're talking months down the road. Why do you want to put yourself through that when you can just do it right? You could have did it right last year, but you didn't. So just do things right. That is all that I can tell you. And that is good advice in any circumstance. Because here's the thing, even with what the LNC pulled against me in 2021, no one is saying that the LNC could not remove me. We were saying they had to do it the right way. And look what happened to them. You do not want that. So I am highly suspicious of people who just don't want to make sure that they are dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, even if they might think it's a little bit of overkill. If you do things the right way, there's no means for anybody to criticize the process. People will always criticize results, no matter which way something goes. But you want to spare yourself people finding fatal flaw with the process. So, do things the right way. If you don't want to, sorry, that is very sketch. And you could have done things the right way last year, and you did not. Who ends up getting elected is ultimately, as long as it's done the right way, none of my concern. So I gave that advice. And I want to tell you what I would do if I was really hell-bent on one outcome or another. I would keep my mouth shut. I wouldn't warn people against the train wreck that I see coming. I would go, ooh, it looks like they're planning an illegal convention. I'll just zip my mouth shut and laugh maniacally at home going, they're shooting themselves in the foot. No, I didn't do that because I care about the process. I gave a good faith caution because I do care about everyone having their rights respected, even if they exercise their rights in a way I don't agree with. I could have kept my mouth shut and just let people go off the cliff rather than warn them. And it's quite obvious, Grace, that you did not watch the prior show. And I literally have no interest in people trying to interact with my points without actually hearing them. That is ignorant, and I have zero interest in it, and I'm thoroughly disappointed in you. There is a conflict in your bylaws, and the only way the conflict can be resolved, which I went over in detail, which you haven't bothered to listen to, is to give the 60 days. There's a good reason for that. But there is definitely a conflict in your bylaws, and the only one that doesn't render absurd other meanings is to give 60 days. If you just gave 45 days, it would be an illegal convention, and whatever was done at that convention would be invalid. I don't want whatever is done at this convention to be invalid. I want the members to have a special convention if that's what they want, and I want it to be legal. I don't want the LNC to be in Michigan's business. I am tired of that. I don't want that. I am giving you my honest counsel as to how to avoid that. Do things the right way. Do not have illegal conventions. You wouldn't want that for yourself. Don't do it to others. If 15 days is enough to make you risk violating people's rights, you don't have your head screwed on straight. We're not talking about the difference between, 45 days and 6 months. Now, second, your bylaws do not allow electronic conventions. So, now that's going to get to the assertion that was made earlier today that the board, actually, I think the accusation was made specifically against the Michigan chair, which is ignorant as well. An accusation was made, but it was walked back. So no names mentioned. It was walked back. It was from a person I respect, and I'm very glad it was walked back. But it was said, this wouldn't be an issue if the chair wasn't dragging his feet. That is so completely off base. It's not even funny. The petition from the members, which had defects in it, and there's an argument to be had that the petition could have been ruled out of order. I'm very glad it wasn't, because I personally don't think the defects were fatal. But I don't think that somebody who ruled that the defects were fatal would have been out of line. I wouldn't have agreed, but it wouldn't have been out of the sphere of reality. So, I'm glad it wasn't ruled out of order. The petition was received on January 3rd. The board has to meet and set a date and location for this convention and arrange to give proper notice. The board met on January 6th. That's 3 days after they received the petition. That's frickin' fast. And since the convention has to be in person, anyone who has organized an in-person convention knows that you don't get a notice and then turn around, bend over, and pull a convention location out of your booty hole. It doesn't work that way. You have to find a location. You have to see if you can afford the location. You have to work on a contract for the location. That does not happen overnight. They've been working on securing a convention location since they met on the 6th. It is now the 13th. That's a week. It is completely unreasonable, uncharitable, and nonsense to state that, oh, it should have been set by now. Talk to me in 2 weeks. Oh, yeah, and the board did have to verify the names on the petition. If in 2 weeks it still hasn't been set, then maybe you have an issue. Unless, of course, there's some kind of proof that, just convention locations are out of the party's budget in the ones that got back with them. But I don't think that's been the case. I don't think there's a shortage of locations. It's a matter of finding a good location at a good price that's good financial stewardship of the party, and that's just a good place to have one. But to give them only a week since they met is not reasonable, and it just shows that there is an agenda at play. Now, to answer Grace's point, listen, anyone can have an opinion. I'm not going to do an argument by via authority, but I can tell you, when you have no training in parliamentary procedure and you're just categorically stating things without any ounce of humility for people who have studied this for years, that is barking moonbat. Now, it's not saying you have to agree with somebody who has some study behind them. You don't. I disagree with JJ. I disagree with Richard. But I approach it with some humility that, these people have training and more experience than me, that perhaps I can learn something. I don't know what profession other people are in or what training other people have had, but if they've had it and I haven't, I'm not going to automatically, arrogantly assume that I just know better. Now, it might be that I do know better, but I'm going to approach it with a little bit of humility and sitting back and listening. But that doesn't mean that somebody who's a quote-unquote expert or has a certain credential is always right. That, of course, isn't the case. But to just categorically come at people who actually do have some training in it it just shows something. Let's just leave it at that. Doesn't mean that JJ is right. It doesn't mean that I'm right. It doesn't mean Richard's ever right. It doesn't mean any of that. But it does mean that we've put the time in to be properly trained in interpretation. There is no compromise when it comes to bylaws. There is no compromise when it comes to a contract. You don't have the right to compromise other people's rights. And the fact that you would even say anything like that makes me realize you just don't understand bylaws. And I'm sorry if that hurts anyone's feelings. It is, in fact, the case. So, on the conventions, in the LPMI bylaws, they distinguish with the state party between meetings and conventions. And there is a video of the convention where that bylaws amendment was adopted. I do think that bylaw, to be honest with you, I don't think JJ agrees with me. I don't know if he agrees with me. I do think that bylaw is ambiguous. And I don't think it's completely unreasonable for someone without any prior context to read it and think electronic conventions were permitted. But when you read it in the context of the rest of the bylaws, and when there's an ambiguity, it gets interpreted in the intent of the body at the time the bylaw was passed, as far as that can be ascertained. There is a video of this. The bylaws were amended in the not distant past. The intent is not in question whatsoever. It's very easy to ascertain, but I would super recommend that Michigan amend that bylaw to be crystal clear, because I do think it's ambiguous. But the clear interpretation, I feel, is that electronic conventions are not allowed. It is clearly the intention of the body when it was passed. You guys are fortunate that you can figure out the intention of the body, because A, it wasn't that long ago, and it was videotaped. So electronic conventions are not allowed. The board is not dragging its feet. Talk to me in a couple weeks, and perhaps I would have a different opinion on that. But that brings up a very, very interesting point. And I want to share my screen. If I still have the Michigan bylaws up, I do. There's something I didn't cover in my last video, so I am glad that I'm doing this one to backtrack a little bit. And this is going to where people were arguing, because remember, there was two separate issues with the other convention. There was notice of filling of board vacancies, and then there was notice of the motion of no confidence. All of the parliamentarians agreed, some more strongly than others, that it was illegitimate to fill the vacancies at convention. And one of the arguments made in a split opinion on whether or not the motion of no confidence was in order is absolutely not. It was a special convention, however you want to word it. But let's put that aside for a second. It's from this term that's in the bylaws. So I am going to share the screen here. And this is very relevant to the issue of electronic conventions. I'm going to take the chat off the screen for a moment. So if you look at paragraph 10 here, it's 10, isn't it? Yes. So it talks about a member of the executive committee who misses 3 consecutive meetings of the executive committee or fails to perform his or her fiduciary duties may be removed from the executive committee and replaced by a 2/3 vote at a regular meeting of the executive committee or a majority vote at a convention. Notice there's a distinction there between meeting and convention. It doesn't call the convention a members meeting. Following a motion for a vote of no confidence. So there are 2 ways to remove somebody via a vote of no confidence. Put aside the whole regular special convention thing for a second. You could do it at an executive committee meeting, or you could do it at a convention. And then it goes on to say, and these bylaws have some issues. All executive committee members must be notified of the intent to remove at least 14 days prior to the what? The convention? No, the meeting. In the prior sentence, it distinguished between a meeting and a convention. So what is so funny is that the executive committee at that time could have done the vote to remove at an executive committee meeting. They gave enough notice for that, but they didn't. They tried to do it at a convention, and for all the reasons I noted before, that was illegitimate. It would have been so easy for them to do it right, but they didn't. That is why I'm advising people with this special convention, have patience and do it right. You messed up last time. Now, quite obviously, Andrew is a friend of mine. I've made it very clear that if I were in Michigan, I think the motion of no confidence was complete bullshit. But it's the right of the body if that's what they want to do. But you need to do it properly. And I did not cover that last time, and I'm glad I'm able to cover it this time. Okay, we're back. And I think that is pretty much it. But people going around claiming that the board is dragging its feet or it's violating the bylaws because of 45 days and electronic conventions, I'm sorry, that is just absolutely incorrect. And the fact is, Andrew has been telling the members who wish a special convention this. since before they turned in the petition, and they chose to ignore it. Stubbornness and pugnaciousness is not serving anybody here, and it is not going to serve yours the wrong word, because I don't, it's not going to serve the members who want a special convention's interests. Just do things the right way. And from what I understand, the board is doing this. But if you hear anything that says they're dragging their feet, at this point in time, that is premature and not reasonable. Again, talk to me in a couple weeks and I might agree with you if it hasn't been set yet. I think planning a special convention, a reasonable amount of time, is within 3 weeks. They got the notice on January 6th. The end of this month would be 3 weeks. After that, it probably would become unreasonable. That is why a lot of state bylaws, I did think of another point I wanted to make. That is why a lot of state bylaws say that upon receipt of the petition, the board has to set the date, no matter how far out that date has to be, that they have 30 days to do it, particularly when you're dealing with a special convention. Now, I think 30 days is a special in-person convention. I think 30 days is a tad bit long. I think 21 days is more reasonable, personally. But just telling you what some other state committees had. State boards have. And then another comment that was made, again, the person saying it walked it back, is the LNC, and the LNC's not involved right now. I am saying my personal opinion. The LNC, most of the LNC doesn't even know that anything's going on in Michigan because it's not our issue. But it was said the LNC needs to respect the rights of the members to call a convention the way they did in Massachusetts. If you would compare these two situations in that manner, that's Lulu. The only way it compares to Massachusetts is in reverse. In Massachusetts, members petitioned for a special convention. The board had 30 days to set it. They were in fact dragging their feet to butting up right against the 30 days. And when the deadline was about to pass, instead of setting the convention, they expelled all the people who signed the petition. If you think that is at all analogous to this situation, you're just looking for something. That it is completely opposite. So there, when the board refused to call a convention, the members then, because one of the officers was one of the signatory members, then set the convention themselves. Now, in this circumstance, I haven't really read those. Well, I did, but I can't remember. Don't want to say I didn't read it because I read the bylaws up and down, but I've read 10 sets of bylaws since then. If the board actually refused to set the convention after a properly submitted petition, then you would be talking about an analogous situation. But it's not at all analogous. The board is not refusing to set it. I absolutely support the right of members exercising their rights under the bylaws to call a special convention. Whether or not I think that special convention is the best use of time, considering that you're coming up on your annual convention, or the best use of party resources, that is up to the members. Honestly, and I think Massachusetts said this, but I could be mistaken. I know I've seen it in some bylaws. Honestly, I think when a special convention is called by members, the members need to bear the cost. However, Michigan's bylaws don't say that, so the party bears the cost. But you guys might want to look at that, because you could have bad actors. I'm not saying these people are. I'm saying in the future, you can have bad actors who just continually sign petitions for special convention to try to bankrupt the party. And if members call a special convention and it turns out it was really justified and what everyone wants, a motion can be presented at that convention to then have the party reimburse the petitioning members. That's what happened in Virginia. It wasn't a petition, but the members organized a special convention, and they had to pay all the costs out of their pocket. They ended up getting, I think, partially reimbursed for it, but there was no guarantee of that. Members calling for a special convention, particularly when an annual convention is coming up, they need to have some skin in the game. However, Michigan's bylaws do not provide for that, so the party pays for it. But other people who are listening and you're thinking of your own bylaws, I would put a provision in your bylaws for that. Grace, you're obviously not listening because I said that's not applicable to this group. I said I'm talking about a hypothetical situation, and you can't negate something that's possible by calling an illegal convention. That's like saying, well, we could do it by postal mail and that wouldn't be so expensive. Yeah, but you're not allowed to do that. You could do it by carrier pigeon and maybe that would be cheaper. Yeah, but your bylaws don't allow that. You could hire a psychic perhaps that can read some tarot cards and figure out what everyone's vote would be, but you're not allowed to do that. So the board is, in fact, working it out. Was there anything else I want to know? I wanted to talk about the differences with Massachusetts. I covered that. So I think I pretty much covered everything. I'm going to scroll through comments to see if there's anything else I wanted to address. And it also gives you a few moments to put any more comments in there that you would like me to address. Andrew, I think I'll include that. Larry, thank you. He made me look. He did make me look. Thank you. Thank you very much for the super chat, Larry. I truly appreciate it. And Andrew, thanks for that timestamp. I might put that up on the Elpedia page since that's now become an issue. So let me... Yeah, the whole thing with violating an NDA, let me tell you why that super upsets me, is because that doesn't just affect Michigan. When people violate the NDA, they compromise trust in the CRM, and that screws other state parties, such as Colorado. When you start violating NDAs, then you start messing with Colorado. You start messing with all the states that believe in the CRM, because when you start undermining confidence, and that's violating a contract, that then starts screwing with everyone and the future of being an effective political party to begin with. And to do that for power games, that is unconscionable. And I am flipping through here. Grace says this is the first understandable argument she's heard against the special convention. That means you've been going around saying your opinion without knowledge, because there have been written opinions against the special convention, which are exactly the same that were given here, that you apparently didn't read. And that's okay. I don't expect everyone to live and eat this stuff, but perhaps you should actually read the material before authoritatively giving your opinion. because all of this information has been out there, and I already did a super, super long video on this. Well, it's about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, breaking down everything. So that information was out there if you wanted it. So say you're just asking for transparency, it's been out there. You just haven't looked at it. And then went around attacking people over their opinion in ignorance. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. People disagree with me all the time. But I do mind people going at me without having looked at my actual argument or the other arguments that have been presented. Richard Brown disagrees with me on this. I don't attack him over that. We disagree respectfully because we understand each other's arguments and we disagree. But you've come at me without even knowing what's been said before or what the argument was. You just came at me. And I expect better from people who have been my friends. I don't expect that of people that I haven't been friends with, but I do expect better of my friends. Okay, I am flipping back through here. Okay. And thank you, Bill Cox, for the super chat. I super, super appreciate it. Thank you so much. I think that is it for the for this. And as far as Grace saying lying about her attacking me, I saw what you posted on my wall. I deleted it because I had no interest in that. You can claim that all you want. I wish you the best. But I have certain minimum requirements for people. Well, I'm sure you do. And that then just goes to show that it is better what I decided. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the super chat. I super appreciate it. Freedom of association, Grace, and I choose not to associate with that. All right, everyone, I hope you have a good night. I will probably see you tomorrow. It will probably be a history show, which is what I prefer to do. And as I said, Monday, oh wait, do I have a bylaw? No, bylaws committee, it's not national, it's Colorado, is Sunday. So probably will not have a show on Sunday, probably will have a show tomorrow. And Monday, I will give you guys a preview. I have a guest coming on, and we are going to, this is not going to be well, it's somewhat related to LP stuff, but it's more unrelated to LP stuff. It's more of one of my personal shows where, you know, in coming to grips with a lot of things that have happened with me in the past, and also still coming to grips with my fairly recent, though it's probably been 4 years now, autism diagnosis. That there is something I ran across that is very common amongst people who have ADHD or have Asperger's syndrome, otherwise known as high functioning autism, called, and it's not an official diagnosis, but I have a feeling it is something that will eventually be an official diagnosis. But right now, it's just a phrase or a framework that helps people perhaps understand themselves better. And if you go back on my prior shows talking about this, I have express this, but without the words. And it turns out a lot of people have been expressing this, where I said I have a hyperactive empathy reflex, to the point where I even personalize objects. Like, I don't like throwing things out because I have this like short circuit in my brain where I like feel like the object's feelings will be hurt if I throw it out. So it's this it's a sensory disconnect. It's an emotional disconnect that is like an overactive empathy response, which is not what people typically expect out of people with autism. But the language that I came across is and a friend of mine on Twitter had shared that he struggles with this, not as a person with autism, but as a person with ADHD. And it's called rejection sensitivity dysmorphia, or dysphoria. So rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And what that is just an overly devastating emotional reaction to a sense of rejection or betrayal. And again, that's not an official like DSM diagnostic thing, but it is something that a lot of people on the spectrum and people with ADHD have pointed out. And anyone who was around during the time of that LNC nightmare, you know, JJ was there. He's the one who urged me to take down a video. I absolutely fell apart. And at the time, I just blamed my super emotional reaction to the betrayal by friends as an autistic meltdown. But a lot of that has continued. No, that's the wrong way to put it. I don't share all of my reactions. That happened to be just a big, thing that happened in the public. But I don't share other reactions. But in viewing that particular thing, I definitely overreact emotionally. And I don't do that online. I tend to withdraw from being online and become absolutely non-functional when there is that feeling of rejection or betrayal. So this person, who's a friend of mine, again on Twitter, I'm going to put his name in the show announcement, has ADHD, and he described how he super struggles with that. And it really touched me the way someone was so open about that, particularly a man on Twitter. I think it's probably a lot easier for a woman to be open about that. But if just me and this friend of mine have, struggle with these sorts of issues, we can't be the only ones. And I like talking about things that people might be struggling with in shame or in silence, to get things out there in the open. So that will be our show on Monday. But if you're curious about that, Google some YouTube videos. Again, it's called Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria. Very, very interesting. And it has really opened the door to some understanding of really bad reactions I can have that really impact my ability for a couple days after events like that to even function. And there were some therapy tips. One of them is cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm not going to a therapist right now, but I've been through cognitive behavioral therapy for my OCD. So I know the techniques, and I think that is super going to help me in the future, because when you realize that you have some kind of short circuit, that it's not exactly the a healthy reaction or the best reaction, then you're on your way to managing that. I don't think there is any shame at all in admitting, that, just like you'd have no problem saying if you had cancer or you had some other health issue, I don't think there's any shame at all in saying that there might be emotional or thought disconnects that you have. I've always been super, super open about that. And if this resonates with anyone else, it makes it all worth it. The people that will make fun of me for these sorts of things or mock are going to do it anyway. But it certainly explains why. And I firmly believe this is, I've said this on Facebook and got thoroughly mocked for it, though am working through this, is that I still do have a minor, I'm going to say minor because I don't like minimizing people who have been through things like witnessing mass shootings or something, but I do have a minor case of PTSD from what happened to me on the LNC. I still have nightmares about it. I still, if talking about it, can break down in tears. That backstabbing is one of the worst things that have ever happened to me in my life. And it behooves me to understand why that cut so deep and to protect myself against that sort of damage in the future. So that's going to be the show on Monday. I can tell that's a little heavy, but I suspect because libertarianism is definitely autism adjacent, that there will be other autists in the audience who might go, holy crap, I have that kind of reaction, or other people, particularly young men, that might have ADHD and might be ashamed to admit that they have an overly emotional reaction to something. So that's Monday, but until then, I hope you have an awesome night. I hope this information was useful. Bye-bye.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe.